Hi, my name's Renee Chase. We're here today in a very special moment to celebrate the film produced and written by Asaf Saban called Delegation. We were asked to ask a few questions about this film. It's such a meaningful time for it to come out. And so my daughter Danielle and I are here. We are children of Holocaust survivors. I'm second generation. Danielle is third generation. So we're particularly interested in the content here and the effect that it will have on our communities worldwide.
Thank you.
Thank you for having having me. I'm Asaf. I'm actually not the producer. I'm the director and writer. There are other producers from three different countries, to be honest: Israel, Germany, and Poland. So the making of the film got together people from different nationalities with a mutual story. So it was interesting. Yeah.
I'm actually glad that you brought it up in that way, because I think that does segue into some of the questions that came out from watching the film. And just as a point of clarification to begin, I thought it was a documentary, and the question that came up was it scripted and how that all plays into it. And I think that could be something to clarify for the viewers, to give a little bit of context, if you would.
Uh, Basically, it took me quite some time to write it. It's scripted. It's a fiction film, which is inspired, let's say, by two of my favorite film genres. One is a coming of age film, and secondly is a road trip. So let's say that my initial approach was how can I approach such a subject matter with all the complexity and sensitivity and everybody's expectations, um, into something that first and foremost will be loyal to, let's say, my first visit to Poland was when I was 17 in such a trip, and I remember let's say, the gap between first my emotional expectations before coming there and what I actually experienced, and let's say also the constant tension that is being, I think this is an interesting, a fascinating phenomena. I mean, the contradiction that it holds together, and those trips are one of, let's say, the second most common mutual experience of Israelis after the army service, and it's a very extreme experience. So for me, I wanted to deal again through fiction film, let's say, this is what I do. I don't do documentaries. So that was my approach.
And it sounds a little like you are getting at that dichotomy of the youth portrayed between the knowing of the Holocaust, of where they come from, and the actual seeing and being there. And that came up a little in the group discussion. And it sounds like that was a point that you were really trying to flesh out a little bit. Is that personally relevant for you?
Yes, it's very relevant for me. I can tell you that I'm not 17 any longer, and I have a perspective of an adult who have actually read a lot about the Holocaust. But when I sat down to write the script, one of the biggest challenges I faced was to forget everything I knew and try to remember how it was when I was 17. And speaking to other, actually some teenagers, or let's say have been teenagers not long ago, and people my age as well, because it crosses few generations already, this phenomenon. And I can just say, as a side comment, that it took me a while to understand that I'm actually writing a period film, because in a way I wanted to give it a kind of a 90s touch or feel, as someone who grew up in the 90s. It's kind of a period film in the 90s with iPhones, so to say. I mean, the coming of age films I grew up on, and I can give you a hint. It's like, if you calculate yourself the witness age, it makes little sense to that it would take place nowadays. When I was there were I went to this journey with witness with a Holocaust survivor, Yosef's age, but today it's technically, so to say, not possible. So I don't remember exactly the question, but it brought up intuitively. It made me, it kind of, I realized this is about the relevance, how much it's relevant for myself. So here's a more direct answer to your question. I was far more interested in trying to explore or understand why the kids want to go there, and not necessarily analyze why, let's say, the state apparatus sent them there. Mm-hmm. Because there are many reasons, I think, why the educational system is sending the kids there. But again, I wanted to first remember why I went there. And I can tell you that some of the reasons have little to do with the Holocaust, to be honest. I mean, of course, people want to, they are curious about their own family story, national story. But I think in a more basic human, it's kind of, when you're a teenager, you want to go through a bigger than life experience. I think this is something that really, it's kind of characterizing this age, and I think the kids go there with a certain expectation to come back different, mm-hmm. and to see the real thing, to touch the real thing, and this is something I think that characterize teenagers, regardless of this exact situation. And for me, what I wanted to do is to put the light or focus on everyday issues of kids, quite ordinary kids, by the way. I chose almost boring type of kids. I wanted to pick very ordinary kids dealing with very ordinary issues, and obviously to put them in the foreground, and in the background there's the most dramatic story in history. And that was done for various reasons. I mean, I could tackle the historical questions more directly, or political issues more directly. But I feel, as someone who grew up in Israel, that you are constantly being overcasted by history, by the national, this is nowadays over. It needs no explanations.
Yes.
But I think that this is, this, for me, there's a too thin line in between what is private or individual and what is national. I mean, I can give you another example. I'm sorry, the answers are quite not.
Well, that's going a little more toward the political. So maybe I'd like to ask a question in response to what you just said. We're compelled to never forget. We're compelled to make sure that our children never forget in whatever way we can. given that you were working with many Israeli children and you have that background in your own life, do you feel that we're in a good place in terms of entrusting our youth to never forget? Did you find that Israeli youth and others, I'm sure it was a mixed group, but do you feel that the imperative has been passed on? Do you feel we're in a good, safe place as far as that goes?
I'll give you not the most direct answer. Okay, I apologize because I'm actually in a very abstract, emotionally these days. I find myself in a very abstract,
Yes.
mood. I found myself a few days ago in Warsaw, screening the film in Poland, the Jewish Museum in Warsaw. And on stage, I felt a certain expectation for me being representative of a bigger thing. Mm-hmm. And this is something which I often find, let's say, I don't want to say awkward because it's too harsh word, but it's hard for me these days. I can hardly represent myself. So to speak on behalf of the Jewish people of the state of Israel, this is something which I cannot do. Okay, but what I did say there, and I personally, and this is something I said, I can, I could have shared very horrifying stories. But I decided I want to say something about storytelling. And this brings me to the kind of abstract answer I have for your question. Because I think my Jewish identity and my Israeli identity, I don't feel it's something static. I think I feel these days more than ever that I'm taking part in an historical story. Okay, we just entered quite a dark chapter, but I feel that I have more questions than answers. Now, regarding storytelling, and this might be a more direct answer to your question, I feel it's very crucial what type of story do we choose to tell. And this, and never forget, it's a value that I completely appreciate, but honestly, I sometimes feel that we could tell the same story in different ways, and it's not avoiding because I have the privilege of not speaking as an educator, okay, or an historian, but as someone who's trying to create, to mediate or deliver notions and emotions. So I have the privilege of not taking responsibility for, again, how to educate the next generation.
In that, right? What is the message that
Yeah, exactly. I prefer not to deliver a message. I prefer where everybody have explanation marks, I prefer to raise questions and make people doubt. This is something I feel is almost, it's something that I feel is crucial. Okay, and regarding this, which part of the story do we wish to tell? I can tell you as someone who has been many times after my first visit as a teenager in Poland, that you can give to the same story two completely opposite messages. Okay, it could be a universal human, and it could be something which, let's say, is more nationalist or planting a victimized state of mind. You can take the same story, the same details, and bring a completely opposite message. Okay. Now, again, I'm not an educator. Okay, I'm a father of two little kids, and this is something which is very, let's say, I feel very crucial nowadays. And regarding my storyteller part of my life or my job, I try not to tell people what should they think or how should they feel even. Like, I entered in this film kind of a minefield, which is the representation of Holocaust. And I'm sure people enter supposedly this with a lot of expectations and ideals, but I have my own, I'm not 17, as I said, but because back then I was more interested, to be honest, in girls and my place on the social map. I was curious about history. I was very much, involved. But again, this tension or gap between what you are as an individual, what are you dealing with inside, and what you show outside, or what. So for me, I wanted to give the viewers enough space to project, whatever they want, and hopefully to make them maybe question the gap between what you expect to feel and what you're actually facing. Okay,
That's great.
And I have to admit that there were a few moments where I felt in Q&As. First, the film premiered in the Berlinale, in the Berlin Film Festival in last February. And over there and in few Q&As I've been since, I was happy that people not got into physical fight, but were kind of interpreting the same scene completely opposite. This is for me like mission accomplished, so to say. Like that you can look at the same scene and take it with an ironic take maybe, or take it with a more serious or a straightforward kind of interpretation. And I'm sure that after this horrible dark October, even though it's far from being, we cannot, there's no sum up soon. I'm sure that I would look at that film differently, and I'm not sure that I would have done exactly the same.
Yeah,
if
now.
I would start doing the film now. That's also something that I can say.
Dan, you have a last question? I think we're close.
As we're sort of wrapping up, just to connect some of these pieces, a little bit more about the character development of the witness and really the embracing of the experience of the youth and how you chose to balance that. A comment there, I think, would be quite helpful.
Yosef's character was one of the most challenging characters for me to write, and the casting as well. And I can just say as a note that Ezra Dagan, who plays Yosef, he got his publicity as Rabbi, I don't remember the name of the character, but is actually one of the lead actors in Schindler's List of Steven Spielberg. So this was one of his major roles, and it's not a coincidence that I casted him for that. For me, it kind of relates to what I said about storytelling, because Yosef, as someone who has been there, his memories and stories are very fragmental. They are not the most dramatic stories that maybe people expect him to tell, and not in the right pace that he might, should have performed. But for me, that shows how deep and authentic his memories are, and the fact that he he's kind of this old wise man that he doesn't really again deliver his messages directly, not even to his grandson. But I think that what he tries to emphasize for his grandson at least is to look at the present and to look on the little details that construct his identity and life, and they are not less important than let's say the big narrative and the volume of drama that he personally went through. And the fact that he cannot deliver his story in a professional way, that's for me kind of a sign of the authenticity of his story.
Makes sense. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I had my last questions have all been answered, because I was going to ask about the significance of the stolen shoe, the significance of the girl who screamed out when she was asked to speak. And I think you've answered all of these in your way by saying it's up to me as the viewer, all of us, to really determine that for ourselves. You put it out there in an amazing way. So thank you, and I hope you have great success with the film going forward, and more importantly, that we find peace soon. Amen.
And thanks for the festival for showing the film and having the opportunity for me even to reflect on my life in such a time. So thank you.
Same for us. Thank you.